It was the end of April, and I was moving out of my home in Chicago all the way to Nevada. I hired a company to take all my boxes and ship them to the new house just to make it a little bit easy on me. I wanted to take a road trip down there and stay at some hotels or Airbnbs on the way and just relax for a few days. The total drive would take around 30 hours, so I split that in thirds and decided I would drive 10 hours each day and stay somewhere overnight. After planning out the times, I figured that my first stay would have to be on the far edge of Nebraska. I scrolled through Airbnb looking for anything cheap, as Nebraska didn't really have much to see, so I really just wanted a place to stay for 8 hours and then head back out on the road. I found a small one-story home with 2 bedrooms. Although I didn't really need the 2 bedrooms, the price was a really good deal, so I didn't mind the extra space. However, I did find it a little bit strange that they only showed pictures of 1 bedroom. Again, though, it didn't make much of a difference for me, so I booked it for the next night and got ready for bed. In the morning, I finished packing up my car with the rest of what I had and started the drive. I left a little bit later than I had wanted to, but I figured it wouldn't be much a big deal other than having to drive in the dark for a few hours. If you've ever driven through Nebraska, you would know that it's very plain. There's long stretches hundreds of miles long of barely any lights or buildings at all. A couple hours after dark, I pulled up to the Airbnb. It was off the long empty road I'd been on and down a short gravel path. Initially, I was a little bit disappointed as it looked a lot more worn down on the outside than they had shown in the pictures. I reminded myself that I was only staying for a few hours just to sleep, so it didn't matter too much. I grabbed a couple of my bags and headed to the front door. Usually the owners leave a key in a key box and give you the password, but the door had no key box. In fact, it actually had no lock at all. It was one of those plain doorknobs you'd usually see on a closet door. I started to get a little uneasy, but I didn't really have any other options than to stay here. I opened the door and stepped in, and to my surprise, it was actually fairly nice on the inside. It was small, but the living room and kitchen were well furnished and seemed to be kept up with. I went to the first bedroom, but noticed that it too did not have a lock. Thankfully, the second bedroom did, so that's where I decided to unpack in. There was one thing that got me really creeped out about this bedroom, though. Right in front of the bed on the wall was a small old doorway maybe 3 feet tall and 2 feet wide. The more I looked at this door, the more unsettled I got, but there was no way I was staying in a room that I couldn't lock. I tried to open it just to check what was behind it, but it was locked from the other side. I figured the owner probably just kept some cleaning supplies back there or extra towels or something, but still the door gave me the creeps. I was getting pretty tired, though, so I only unpacked what I needed for the night and started to get ready for bed. I woke sometime in the middle of the night hearing a soft tapping noise coming from the edge of the bed. It was very subtle, but the whole house was silent aside from the tapping. I reached blindly for my phone on the nightstand and turned on the flashlight as quick as I could. As I shined the light toward the edge of the bed, the tapping stopped. I'm not one that gets scared easily. Sure, I'll get creeped out or nervous, but never scared. But something about that small doorway on the edge of my bed and that moment made me truly scared. I jumped out of bed and turned on the lights and grabbed everything and rushed out of the house as quick as I could. It was still really dark outside and I couldn't see much, but as I was back in my car out of the gravel path, I swear I saw a man lying on the ground behind the house. I drove down the road for probably 30 minutes before pulling over and texting the owner to tell him that there might be someone in his house and to call the police. I continued down the road for a couple hours until I found a small town, and I parked in a grocery store parking lot just to get some sleep. I still don't really know what happened at that Airbnb, but the creepiest part was that when I checked my phone in the morning, I saw my message had been read just a few minutes after I sent it, but the owner never responded to it. The neighbor from hell. My boyfriend and I were visiting my parents back in Michigan for a few days, and we didn't want to stay with them. Let's just say for obvious reasons. We ended up finding an Airbnb about 15 minutes away from their house, a cute little one-bedroom condo. The inside was completely redone, very modern, so it wasn't the cheapest. The host seemed nice and had good ratings, but we did see a few comments that raised some red flags. Most of the negative comments mentioned strange experiences with a neighbor. Now, I've had some crazy neighbors, so I'm not one to judge. I simply brought it up with the host before booking, and she stated her neighbor was nosy and sometimes when people tried to get into the Airbnb, she got defensive. But she said she'd let the neighbor know we were staying and what we looked like, so everything should be fine. On the day we arrived, everything went smoothly. We met the host, who lived nearby, and she gave us the key to the entry door and the code to the actual apartment. We unpacked all of our stuff and then headed over to my parents for dinner. I had a few drinks throughout the night to deal with my mother, and before we knew it, it was 10 p.m. and time to head back to the Airbnb. We pulled up to our rental. Each complex had 4 apartments, 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top, and the one we were staying in was on the top left. However, when we pulled up, we could see a small figure standing in between some curtains in the window of the apartment on the top right. Instantly, I felt weird. Who just stares out their window like that? My boyfriend parked, and as I got out, I looked up again, and she was still there, still staring at us. As we both walked toward the entry door, I could make out her features. You know how some people just have that crazy look to them? This was her. Mangled brown hair and wide-open eyes. She had to be at least 60 or 70, and the frown she had, I've never seen someone look so angry. My boyfriend put the key in the door, and we entered. And, not to my surprise, we saw her standing at the top of the stairs. She said nothing, just stood there, watching us. She was very small and round, but the way she was standing, you could see her arms and legs were very thin. My boyfriend and I looked at each other for a second, and then we began to make our way up. We walked up while she stared us down, but to my amazement, she didn't say anything. Rather, she just stared at us with her creepy eyes. I kept looking back as my boyfriend entered the code, and we hurried into the apartment. "What the hell was that?" my boyfriend said softly, looking at me, confused. I shook my head. I was just glad she didn't try to talk to us. Nothing weird happened the rest of the night, until we heard banging on the front door. I shot up from bed just to find that my boyfriend was already awake. The banging was nonstop for maybe a minute or two, until it suddenly went silent. I looked at my phone. It was nearly 4 a.m. Who would be banging on the door at this time? My boyfriend walked toward the door, whispering to me that he was going to look out the peephole to see who was there. I trailed behind him slowly as he inspected. He looked back at me and was clearly confused. Then he opened the door a little to look around, and I heard him gasp. "What?" I whispered and slowly stepped toward him. Laying on the welcome mat outside the door were dead rats. They looked completely gutted, with only one of them still having their head attached. He closed the door, and we both agreed to contact the host later that day. I tried my best to sleep, but the images of those rats kept replaying in my mind. After a while, I looked at my phone. It was 6:30. Accepting the fact that I wouldn't be able to get any sleep, I got up to make coffee, and as I did, I heard the neighbor's door slam shut. I looked out the kitchen window, which overlooked the parking lot, hoping to get a glimpse of the crazy lady. And there she was, standing and staring at our parked car. Not even looking at what was inside, she was just staring at it. She looked so focused on our car for the longest time. And then she slowly turned her head to look directly at me. I jumped back a little and immediately heard her shriek, this horrible, blood-curdling shriek, like she was being attacked. My boyfriend ran out of the bedroom, obviously alarmed, and we both looked out the window again. The neighbor was standing there, holding her head, screaming at the driver's side window. She grabbed the top of the car and started banging her head, screaming things like, "They never leave. When will they leave? Why do they keep coming?" I started recording for insurance purposes, and my boyfriend called the police, and then the host. By the time the police had shown up, she was lying on the ground next to her car, which had very little damage considering what we just witnessed. The host profusely apologized and said that this had never happened before, and refunded our entire trip. We got to see the lady taken away in handcuffs, though it took her a while to comply. We never found out what was wrong with her, but my theory is something just snapped, and we just happened to be the ones that were there when it happened. But I do know this. You should take every review into consideration when booking an Airbnb. Every single one. The Stalker in Vegas. This happened a few years back when my friends and I had just finished our sophomore year of college. Finally done with school for a few months, we wanted to celebrate a little to start off summer break. All of us had small jobs near campus, so it saved up some money. We decided to go big, take a trip to Las Vegas for a few days since none of us had ever been. At first, we looked through hotels in the city, trying to find something cheap, but still big enough for the 4 of us. Eventually, we gave up on that and started checking out Airbnbs. Most were cheaper and bigger anyway. We found a few good ones, but ended up choosing the largest one with the most rooms. Fast forward a couple weeks later, our Uber picked us up from the airport and dropped us off at the house. It honestly looked even bigger in person, and we were all really excited to spend the next few days there. We unpacked and relaxed for a couple hours, worn out from the flight. A few hours after sunset, only me and my friend Alyssa were still awake. It wasn't too late, maybe 8 or 8:30, but the other two had gone to bed early. With nothing better to do, Alyssa suggested we take a walk outside and explore the neighborhood a little. I agreed, eager to see the unique homes. I should mention, our Airbnb was a really nice house, and the neighboring homes were beautiful too. This definitely wasn't a sketchy street or anything, so we didn't think twice about walking around. We headed outside and down the street. After passing 6 or 7 houses, the road took a sharp turn and connected to another street with homes on the side. But these houses, they were nothing like the ones we'd just walked past. They were basically run-down shacks. And I don't mean to be rude, but it was jarring, like we'd crossed some invisible line where the neighborhood just changed. Broken windows, missing mailboxes, even worn-out vacant signs on a lot of the doors. One house even had a stained, ripped-up sofa chair sitting right in the middle of the front yard. We agreed to take the next turn back toward our Airbnb. Then we saw the SUV. It came toward us from down the road with its headlights off. As it got closer, it slowed down, then stopped right next to us. The window rolled down. An older woman, probably in her 50s or 60s, smiled at us. Her movements were jerky, unnatural. "You two are such a cute couple," she said. I forced a thanks, just to end the conversation, and luckily, she drove off. We booked it back to the house. But as we reached the driveway, I saw headlights turn onto our street. Her SUV. She stopped right in front of our rental. This time, she didn't speak. She just stared. Alyssa rushed inside, and I followed, slamming the door behind us. We heard the car drive off, but we stayed up for another hour, locking every door and checking windows. Eventually, we convinced ourselves we were overreacting and went to bed. The next morning, we told our friends what happened. They were creeped out too. We ended up telling the Airbnb owner and asked if we could cancel our third night to leave early. Thankfully, he agreed. That day, we stayed in the city to actually enjoy Vegas. But as night fell, we called an Uber back to the house. During the ride, I got a text from the owner. "Is this the lady from last night?" Attached was a screenshot from the Ring doorbell. There she was, standing on our doorstep in the middle of the night. We had the driver drop us at a hotel parking lot a few blocks away while the owner called the police. After 45 minutes, he called back. The house was clear, but they never found her. We went back, packed in record time, and got the hell out the next morning. I still don't know what you wanted, but I do know this. Always check the area around your Airbnb before you book, because you never know what or who might be waiting just around the corner.